Frederic Taes speaking, and really a warm welcome to everyone. It's a tradition to have a readout session after ICANN public meeting, and tonight we have a very good program, I think. With different speakers, we have reduced the number of speakers compared to previous sessions to enable more time for each speaker to give content. The first one is Chris Mondini, Vice President Order Engagement and Managing Director of Europe of ICANN. I have really the pleasure to welcome. And I will have for each speaker really two key questions. What are really the main key message from ICANN84? And if you have a priority or a main message to give us for the future. Good evening. Welcome, Chris. Thank you to be there.
Hello, good evening, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening. As I said at the opening of the Dublin meeting, it's really a feature of our culture that we are very time zone sensitive. I want to say thank you for inviting me, and what a pleasure it is to kick this off to further highlight the longstanding and excellent collaboration that we have with EURALO. I think it's a fine opportunity to both capture what the community participants see as the highlights and to really assimilate some of the things that took place while hopefully updating the people that were unable to attend or maybe were following only a portion of the meeting. Normally, I start with some statistics. So on the next slide, you may recognize there's this chart with just some of what we call ICANN by the numbers. The meetings are very much an important part of the engagement that we perform, and they really are the visible evidence of the multi-stakeholder model in action. So we published quite a detailed report with many more statistics, but the highlights are these. There were over 2,000 registered participants, about 500 virtually, and about 1,500 on-site in 190 different sessions. We had very good assimilation with fellows and next-gen and newcomers, and we had some really very interesting sessions, which I'll come to in a minute. One thing that I really have to highlight that took a lot of heavy lifting by both the community leaders who participate in planning the agenda and the meeting and our own colleagues on the meetings team is we had pivoted from Oman to Dublin, and really with just about 3 months or so, we put on this meeting in an excellent venue that luckily we knew before and luckily was available. And my sense from the feedback I've received is that people felt the atmosphere was good and productive. And I frankly am relieved that we will go to Muscat after all with just a slight delay. So that will be something to look forward to. There are so many experts on this call that will talk to us from a really position of deeper knowledge than I have. I cover many things at a very shallow level, but I did see that there was, from my perspective, progress on the next round with the approval of the applicant guidebook, with productive sessions on the so-called review of reviews. There were the beginnings of some discussions about what's next for DNS abuse and mitigating that. There was even the Registration Data Request Service, RDRS, also made progress. And in the prep week, we had some really good updates on things like the grant program. We also had some very interesting talks and roundtables led by EURALO. And what I wanted to highlight too for everybody who may not have been aware, we were hosting a high-level diplomat from the United Nations appointed by the General Assembly to collect input and feedback on how this model works, and to be part of a meeting that showed a really collaborative spirit, a really, I think, productive, constructive community that, as I mentioned, was making forward progress at different speeds on different issues, I think really depicted us in a good light. The next slide I have is really just to list a few of the high-level type community sessions we had, some of the updates we provided during prep week. One very heartwarming part of the opening ceremony was the presentation to Alfredo Calderon of the Tarek Kamel Award for Capacity Building. He's really very dedicated in this field, and having worked with him in the North America region, of which Puerto Rico is part, I can really attest to his passion for ICANN and for capacity building. And of course, we recognized many community appointments and passing of the baton in many cases. And EURALO also, we were able to thank Sebastien for all of his excellent service and hard work, and welcome Frederic into the role. And I, again, look forward to continued work with all of you at the EURALO board and at all levels, and the community members here. As we move on to future Europe-based meetings, there will be more than one on my radar coming up. But let's talk about Dublin. I'll hand it back to you, Frederic, and I hope that's a helpful introduction. And also, I may not be able to stay for the whole thing, but I'm going to stay for as much as I can. But Adam is here to answer questions if you need him. Thanks.
Frederic speaking. Thank you very much, Chris, and congratulations again to all the staff for having relocated the ICANN public meeting. Really so fast way for a huge meeting with people coming over the world. It was really a big challenge and nice content, a nice project to come. Excellent. And I would like to invite now, and we are happy to have EURALO share during the the ICANN84 meeting in Dublin. So you have, I don't know if the camera can be put on. Okay, excellent. So welcome, Sébastien. The floor is yours.
Yes, it was for me an important meeting, but I guess for all of us, a lot of things get on during this meeting, and I would like to target on some specific topics. Mainly, I will talk about plenaries, because I feel that when you gather people from all around the world and you want them to be together, it's a little bit strange to spend a lot of time, each one in an own room, own silos, and not having really opportunity to have a discussion. And that's a struggle I didn't win, to have plenaries. It's end up to have two plenaries. When I say plenaries, ICANN global plenaries on the same topic, and I will come back on that. But at large is very good to organizing also plenaries, and it was very interesting to have two organized by, let's say, ALAC and one organized by EURALO. And the two first were one was areas and at a crossroad, governance gap, regional challenges, and ICANN role. And I think it was really a good topic, and on time. As you know, there are a lot of discussion about what is the future of the areas, and as a matter of fact, after we left Dublin, the leaders of NRO and each areas met in South America to go ahead with ICP2. It's one of the documents who set up the scene for ICANN. There is 1, 2, and 3, and the second is specifically about the IP addresses and how it must be run. And thank you for Paris to organizing this first at-large plenary session. And then we had a second plenary session organized by Zook. It was increasing capacity in underserved region, registry and registrar. The objective was to discuss where and how it could be done to have more registrar first, and maybe some new registry in some underserved region. I guess we are talking more about South America and Africa. It was a very interesting discussion, and I hope that there will be some output in the future, and specifically some link with a new gTLD program. I guess some other speaker will talk a little bit more about that. And then we had the last plenary session was organized by EURALO. As a matter of fact, we take the third topic, put it as a proposal for at large, and it was organized by Paris also, and very well done. And I would like, this time I have write something, therefore, two-part EURALO session on rethinking ICANN legitimacy, organized and moderated by Paris Andrei during ICANN84, was very well attended and exceptionally engaging. The format worked extremely well. The first part, and it was before the meeting, it was an online discussion, brought together a focused roundtable discussion, and I had the pleasure to have speaking in that. The second part opens the floor for community input with invited guests, moving the conversation toward concrete next step. Across both segments, three key themes emerge. First, the immediate issue highlighted in Jonathan's recent letter about AT84 and their suspension. The question of the accountability and for ICANN is still a good question. And we know that we withdraw this AT83 or they will push back. At the same time, the board withdraws the holistic review or the pilot holistic review, as you want to call him. And it's important at this time where we are talking about the WSIS plus 20 and the decision for the future of the IGF. And a lot of changes, and it was important. I would like to end up with the two plenary sessions made for the whole ICANN. And if you allow me, I will switch to French. But I need to go to this slide. Okay. Merci beaucoup. Donc, Sébastien Bachollet à nouveau s'exprimant en français. Une des raisons, c'est que je pense important d'utiliser les outils qui sont mis à notre disposition, et celle de l'interprétation étant une de mes revendications depuis très longtemps, je ne peux pas ne pas l'utiliser. Donc, la suite logique de la discussion qu'on a eue avec la plénière organisée par Paris Esfandiari, c'est que il y a eu deux plénières qui étaient sur les review of reviews. At large était, je vais dire, contre ça, voulait que ATRT 4 aille et soit organisé. Ça n'a pas été le cas. Donc, il y a une grande discussion qui a lieu. Elle a eu lieu par deux plénières pendant ICANN. Et puis, vous avez peut-être suivi, aujourd'hui, il y avait deux, je vais dire, à nouveau plénières organisées pour discuter de ce que chacun de nous, qui étions membres de revue, avons ressenti une discussion plus large, ouverte à tout le monde, et c'était très intéressant. Je crois que c'est un des sujets sur lesquels il va falloir qu'on trouve les moyens de continuer à se pencher et à travailler, que ce soit au niveau de RALO, que ce soit au niveau de ALAC ou au niveau de At-Large. Je ne sais pas pour mon temps, mais je crois que je vais m'arrêter là. Il y aura d'autres occasions de m'exprimer, mais merci encore pour l'invitation. Et je voudrais terminer en remerciant tout le monde pour ces années de travail collaboratif et collectif pendant le moment où j'étais président de RALO. Les choses doivent avoir une fin de temps en temps et c'est important. Et donc, bienvenue au nouveau. Good luck. Merci.
Thank you very much, Sebastien, and good to have you this evening and that you are staying with us. Always welcome. I would like to introduce the next participant. Next speaker is Matthias Hudobnik from the Security and Stability Advisory Committee. Matthias, are you there? The floor is yours.
Yes, I'm here. I hope you can hear me well. I'm currently traveling. I hope you can hear me good. I will try my best to give you a quick recap. So I would like to start with the four cross-community sessions. So we held four very successful ones with the ICANN board, with the at-large community, but also with the contracted party house, and also the GAC, and an open mic session with the RSAC. And the discussion were very lively and also productive. A big focus in this week was obviously our new SSAC 132 advice on the free and open source software in the DNS, as well as updates on current working parties. As we have the responsible integration into the DNS ecosystem, the right working party, but also the DNSSEC operational consideration ones. And we have two exciting new working parties starting soon. We kick them off during the meeting. So one is related to DNS abuse and artificial intelligence, looking at how AI is being used both to launch sophisticated attacks and to, let's say, build better detection and mitigation tools. And the second one is then a DNS transparency one, which is exploring the idea of a near real-time feed of all new registered domains. Security researchers can spot and also block malicious ones the moment they appear, let's say. Having said that, I want to focus on the SSAC 132, our, let's say, new advice on the free and open source software. because it's probably one of the most important advices SSAC has published this year, I would say. So very quickly, the SSAC 132 confirms in a simple way the importance of open source software in the DNS system. So 9 out of 12 root server operators use FOSS, thinking of bind and NSD. And then we have 9 out of 10 largest TLD registries also rely on FOSS. So we have here 9 out of 10 also use, for example, Fred or Anomalous or others. And also the big public resolvers, and also most of I run unbound or not, or resolvers like, for example, Core DNS or again, like Bind. And so in short, the DNS is built on a free and open source software. And why does it matter? Because FOSS brings huge strengths. We have like economic efficiency, full transparency of code. We have also collaborative security through main MIs. And we have also software diversity that makes the system more resilient. And also it lowers also the barriers for, so that anyone can innovate and run their own infrastructure. But there is also real risk. So maintainer burnout, we have financial sustainability of projects, which can be a problem, and also shared dependencies, for example, that can create single points of failure. And the fact that FOSS doesn't come with, let's say, warranties or traditional support contracts. And also the biggest danger right now is, however, it's not technical, it's more like on the regulatory side, where we say policymakers around the world are writing new cybersecurity laws, and also many of these laws unconsciously assume that, let's say, proprietary software would, with clear suppliers, contracts, and liability chains, be better. And let's say we also say here, or we see here already some kind of, let's say, trends also in the EU, like the EU Cyber Resilience Act, also NIS 2, then the 2023 US National Cybersecurity Strategy, and also upcoming UK Production Security and Telecom Infrastructure Code of Practices in 2025. So if these rules are applied blindly to FOSS, they could break the DNS. And the good news is that also some jurisdictions are starting to get it right. So, for example, the US strategy explicitly exempts volunteer maintainers and also puts, let's say, responsibility on deployers and not developers. And the EU is also introducing the concept of FOSS stewards. Individual contributors are not treated as commercial suppliers, which is very important. And yeah, the lesson is clear. You cannot copy-paste proprietary supply chain rules onto open source. And also, so let's say this kind of advice tries to bring some important points for policymakers, which is not typical for an SSAC advice, very quickly, explicitly acknowledging in law that the DNS and much of critical infrastructure depends on FOSS. Also consult the actual FOSS community, maintainers, contributors, and also supporting nonprofits when drafting rules. Put responsibility on the organizations that deploy the software, not on volunteers which develop it, and also incentivize sustainability. So treat key FOSS projects as shared public good and tackling risk collectively. So support audits, better dependency management, and also security research and on the ecosystem level. So in short, FOSS is the foundation of the DNS, a global public good, and if we regulate it with proprietary assumptions, we risk kind of destabilizing the internet itself. And with the right approach, we can keep it secure, innovative, and sustainable for everyone, which is very important. And very quickly before I close, so we also had our traditional DNSSEC and security workshops with excellent sessions on what keeps, for example, 16 large TLDs awake about DNSSEC operations in 2026. Then the new DNSSEC data collection platform, automatization of DNS records with a great success story from the .check. And then we have multi-signer setup, Optimum, also TTLS, and even earlier work on DNSSEC. And the next key rollover was also part of it. And then finally, we had like lightning talks on non-domain identification systems, also SSAC, recent work on name collision and also alternative namespaces, and the discovery of associated domains and the implications of the UK Online Safety Act for age assurance was also highly appreciated. Yeah, that's the SSAC update for ICANN84, and thanks a lot for the possibility to give you an update.
Thank you very much, Matthias, for your availability in some difficult circumstances, from what I understand.
Thanks.
Thank you. So really interesting work done and good things to come. And the next person is Joanna Kulesza from ICANN Governmental Advisory Committee, and please speak also slowly for our interpreters. Thank you. The floor is yours, Joanna.
Thank you so much, Frederic, and thank you for the invitation. I will try to pace myself. I'm one of the guilty ones for always speaking too quickly. Just for the purpose of transparency, I am a proud at-larger and ALS member, but I do have the honor to communicate our community with that represented by the Governmental Advisory Committee. That makes my job both easy and difficult. Easy because the GAC traditionally publishes a report. So it's relatively easy for me to highlight what the GAC is interested in. We also have these regular bilaterals during every ICANN meeting. The at-large, the ALAC representing the at-large, and the GAC meet. We decide on topics of mutual interest, and we discuss those topics in more detail. What I think might be useful is for me to do two things. I will paste the link to the GAC communique from Dublin for those of you who are interested in more details. And I will just try to highlight a few of the points, starting with those that we did cover during our bilateral session. The evergreen topics of mutual interests, of which there are plenty, include DNS abuse. They include the next round of new gTLDs and particularly the applicant support program. And I will go a little bit more into detail on that specific one. And then we have also talked about the review of reviews, which Sebastien already mentioned. And there, it might be relatively easy to summarize that both communities are concerned with the work that was done thus far and seem somewhat left behind with a new round of reviews. But that's a fact. That is where we stand, and both communities are committed to ensuring that the multi-stakeholder model remains stable and develops coherently. The topics of high importance to the GAC include, as you can see reflected in the report and was repeated throughout the meeting in Dublin and intersessionally, the applicant support program. Summarizing that discussions very briefly, it's of paramount importance to the GAC and to the at-large to ensure that the support offered to applicants is indeed effective. Now, this can mean two things. On one hand, it means capacity building, and that's an area where both communities have gone to great lengths to ensure that the underserved communities are better communicated, are better represented, and that the message for the opportunity that the new round brings reaches them in time and in detail. Maybe there is room for a little bit more coherence, particularly with different communities working around the same topics. On the other hand, it also means institutional and financial support, particularly, as the GAC noted, with regards to additional fees that are to be introduced for evaluation of geographic names for the new round, and issues of Latin script diacritics that have been very high on our own at-large's agenda as well. So this is probably just for me to confirm that the topics we regularly discuss during the meetings on policy, the Consolidated Policy Working Group, they are also reflected in the work of the GAC. Then another evergreen very high on the agenda of both communities is DNS abuse. And the GAC is very active in ensuring that DNS abuse can be tackled effectively, also with regards to possible policy implementation. We've seen the amendment to the contracts. Policy work is also one of the avenues to pursue ensuring DNS abuse resilience of the entire system. One of the hot topics that remains closely connected to both DNS abuse and the new round of gTLDs is data. We now speak about the RDRS, the red dress, as some like to call it. We're looking into a system that has been introduced by ICANN and is working well, but remains voluntary. So tracking the way that the RDRS works and how we might work together to enhance it, to increase it, is definitely one of the areas of interest. As GAC notes, is also the accuracy. So making sure that the data we do have is accurate and serves the purposes for which it is being collected and processed. And then maybe just 2 points to complement the reports that you can review in more detail yourself, the communique from Dublin. On one hand, GAC has been very interested in all things concerning the Afrinic case, if I may refer to it that way. And this is transposed onto a close cooperation with the RIRs, hopefully to ensure the further evolution of a transparent multi-stakeholder model at ICANN and beyond. And another issue that is of ultimate importance and is happening as we speak this week, the meeting is unfolding, is WSIS plus 20. We do hold regular meetings with the GAC intersessionally on regulatory updates. We always welcome input from the governmental engagement team on regulatory developments around the world. The UN is always high on the agenda, and so is the WSIS plus 20 process. So in that sense, the broader spectrum of geopolitics, of internet governance, and how it might impact our own policy development and the efficiency of our ICANN model is very high on GAC's agenda. I think that squeezed my presentation into roughly 7 minutes. Thank you so much for bearing with me, Frederic. I'm very much looking forward to hearing what others have to say. Thank you.
Frederic speaking. Thank you very much, Joanna, for the point of view from GAC and the link also in the chat to the GAC communique. And now the floor will go to Sébastien from GNSO, Generic Name Supporting Organization. Sébastien.
Thank you, Frederic. Sebastien from the GNSO. And at the GNSO, I am now, for the last year, the GAC liaison. So Joanna's peer on the GNSO side, but she did such a great job that I won't add much to that. So the GNSO had, as always, a busy week and many things to do. Just a bit by random encounters, we also had a meeting last week that almost close the ICANN. The number of topics that we weren't able to fully tackle at ICANN, we were able to close last week. So I'll speak about both. So first of all, at ICANN, we elected a new chair. And that new chair is Susan Payne. Greg DiBiase, who had been the chair for the last 2 years, not only was term limited, but moved on to the board and is representing the contractor party on the ICANN board. And so we need a new chair. I'm not a counselor and not a voting member of the council as a liaison. So I didn't vote for her, but I would gladly. She's a good friend and a fantastic woman. And I happen to be a European. So I'm afraid I might have to give her my seat next time. I'll still come as a spectator, but I think it's right for her to present next time. We did a lot of work, as always, but I don't want to be too repetitive on DNS abuse, for which we are preparing a new PDP, and the term has been floated for a little while of micro PDP or very short PDP or very concise PDPs. It's still a PDP, it's still a policy development process. I heard mention about Joanna, the Latin diacritics that is dear to your heart. It is also a PDP that we're running at breakneck pace. It's going on very well and very quickly. DNS abuse should be also one of those PDP which is designed to have a very succinct, a very precise target to make sure that we don't spend years on it. Now, in discussions with the rest of the community and the GAC, there were comments about the fact that GNSO processes take a long time and PDPs take a long time, which they do. And in 6 minutes, I won't have the time to give you the whole reason why, but these things take time. And there's good reasons why we take time in developing these policies. But we're trying now, indeed, again, to slice the problem into bite-sized chunks to be able to run a PDP not over 10 years, maybe 1 or 2 years from the moment we start to the moment it is implemented. Again, diacritic is probably going to be the best example of that. A bit too short on time to make the next round. We're still discussing these things. But let's see if we can be as brilliant with the DNS abuse targets that we're hitting. There was discussions, obviously, about accuracy, about urgent requests. These are not GNSO council discussions directly. They're more community discussion with the council. And between all just, again, processes, because some of these, like, for example, urgent requests live within an IRT, an implementation phase. which is technically something that ICANN org manages rather than the GNSO Council. The GNSO Council usually participates very heavily because we're implementing policy that the GNSO Council produced. We talked also about RDRS. I was very fortunate to lead this effort for the last 2 years, and a bit more, actually 4 altogether, since the DODP was published. And we finalized our final report that has been presented to Council last week and is being sent as we speak tonight, actually, I believe. And then on for Council and the board to decide a bit where they're going to go with this. I think that there's no major surprises. The board has already authorized during ICANN another 2 years of funding for RDRS at this stage as is, until we figure out where it needs to go. The group offered some points of view on further developments that need to happen. For example, to accredit law enforcement. For example, to try to engage and include CCTLDs who want to participate. Efforts also policy-wise to try to bridge between registrars and privacy and proxy providers and see where those two are actually under the same roof, under the same company, if the disclosure that a registrar can't give because the information is private can't be given by the privacy and proxy. So work to be done there. In the next few months, I expect it mainly to be a conversation between the GNSO Council and the board about it. We also, after much debate, probably too much debate about that topic, but I'm not an expert on IGOs. But we finally voted some resolution on IGOs to help the IRT to proceed with this. This is one of the last big chunks needed for the publication of the HEP in December. So it was quite important for us to do it now and find a solution that works for all, and as well with the GNSO, that also doesn't break the process. And we didn't manage to vote that in Dublin, but that was voted last week after a few more discussions and finding agreements amongst each other. Latin diacritics, I talked about it very briefly, but as the PDP is running really fast and meeting its targets, or at least the targets that the GNSO gave it, there is a question, and Joanna mentioned it, from the GAC. There was in their communique a question about seeing if there was a possibility to actually make this PDP ready for the next round. Now, because of timelines and there's non-compressible timelines in the GNSO, particularly with regards to public comment, to giving bodies the right amount of time to be able to read what they're signing into or what they're voting into before they do, and etc. At this stage, from the GNSO Council's point of view, it doesn't look like it's going to be able to make it to the next round, simply because the policy won't be prepared to be ready and implemented by December, which is a criteria. You need to make it to the HEP to be in the next round. Because this policy matches and stays very close to another policy, which was the IDN EPDP that was conducted by my good friend and colleague Donna Austin last year, or up to 2 years ago. Because these two match quite closely in terms of technological response, I still personally believe that there might be a way to fit it in. But this is beyond the council, beyond the GNSO's work. It's going to be a topic for the IRT and a topic for the team that's done fantastic work in implementing all these things. I see a hand up. I'm not quite sure if I should give it or if I could just
time management is difficult. It's already 9 minutes approximately, but we can maybe take a question or remark from Christopher Wilkinson, and then we go to the next speaker. Christopher.
Thank you very much, Frederic. In short, on the Latin diacritics question, what we've just heard is not really acceptable. First of all, GAC and the at-large community have made a very strong point that it is essential that the Latin diacritics be included in the next round. And I must say personally, and I think it's a sentiment that is shared, of GNSO procedures seem to be a design to hold hostage legitimate political, social, and economic demands for changes in their policy, and I don't accept it. But you've heard from
Frederic
the
speaking.
GAC, and you've heard from at large. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher, for remark. We have unfortunately a tough agenda with many things, but this may be a good point for next meeting to come back on this topic. Appreciated, Christopher. Thank you very much, Sebastien, for these highlights.
Thank you.
Not easy situation always. We go now to Michaela Shapiro from Article 19, part of EURALO committee also, and the non-commercial stakeholder group. And if you can maybe summarize in shorter time. Michaela, are you with us?
Yes, thank you so much, Frederic. Thank you so much for the time. I will do my best to speak slowly, but also concise. So thank you so much for this. What I would love to do with this limited time is to focus on a few of the sessions that I think were particularly stand out, that the non-commercial stakeholder group either organized or facilitated in some capacity, in case some of you weren't able to make it, as I'm aware that a number of sessions also conflict, which is a tragedy, but the reality of the fun of ICANN. So one session that I'd like to draw attention to is we hosted a session on data accuracy and how to ensure anonymity while still ensuring a secure internet. How do we find that balance? And there's a position paper that the non-commercial stakeholder group has developed on the topic, finding that balance with some recommendations for upcoming work at ICANN on the topic. And we stand the position that the non-commercial stakeholder group takes is that accuracy should not be conflated with identity verification. It should be focused and very clearly delineated as contactability, so ability to reach a registrant. So that's just one element that we focused on among a number of topics. Similarly, we hosted a discussion on DNS blocking, which was inspired by a report from the SSAC. So really grateful that Matthias was able to join and give an overview of their priorities. So based on a report that SSAC had released ahead of our meeting earlier this year, we then decided to expand on the topic and have a presentation from SSAC really laying out the kind of technical elements of where there could be a risk of censorship at the DNS. And we brought in civil society speakers who were able to discuss what happens when these blocks are implemented. And then we had speakers, including myself, who spoke from the NCSG's perspective and to kind of discuss how we could bring this into the work of ICANN going forward, and particularly when it comes to DNS abuse, which I will also go into in more detail. So I guess actually that's quite a good segue. So DNS abuse, unsurprisingly, was a very hot topic for the NCSG. Pretty much every session agenda that we had, whether it was a joint meeting or a solo meeting with NCSG, it was a hot topic. Just to reiterate a couple of our points, we are very pleased with the current definition of DNS abuse as outlined by ICANN, which keeps it quite narrow and focused on the technical elements and rather than content-based abuse. We do have some interests in making sure that the PDP process, so the policy development process, allows for sufficient space and time for NCSG members who tend to operate with more time constraints to be able to engage. So we hope that as we consider the importance of addressing DNS abuse, we also bear in mind the ability of those in the community to be able to engage, as there are human rights implications to these policies. We want to make sure that there's scope and time, adequate time, to reflect on where we need to when it comes to integrating human rights safeguards there. And also just to bear those considerations as we think about what kind of friction we want to introduce to these processes when it comes to DNS abuse mitigation. And lastly, I'll just end on one topic that I think hasn't come up quite as much today, which is internet governance and the WSIS +20 process. I think a couple of people alluded to it, but just to say there were a number of meetings that the NCSG was involved in, as well as external civil society organizations that were organized, hosted, inputted into. And the NCSG was quite lucky to also have a session where the WSIS co-facilitators joined a meeting. We were able to ask some questions about the process, and our position is largely, let's ensure that human rights are protected online. Let's reinforce the multi-stakeholder model, and let's keep the IGF going. And we're very keen to see the outcome of this process. So I hope that was short and sweet enough. There's a ton of other topics we could go to, but I will turn to Frederic and very happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Frederic speaking. Thank you a lot, Michaela. It is really inspiring, and maybe we'll have also a poll afterwards from the community. If you have topics interesting that really inspiring you, please mention them in the poll. Organize another session on those topics. I will give the floor now to Andrei Robachevsky from the ICANN Addressing Supporting Organization. A great guy. We have worked Internet Society together, Manners. I'm really happy that you are here with us tonight. The floor is yours, Andrei.
Thank you, Frederic, and thank you for a very nice introduction. Really appreciate it, and thank you for inviting me. So I'm Andrei Robachevsky, coming from the ISO Address Council, and bring in the perspective from numbering community. The Address Council for the past 2 years have been very busy, unusually busy, because we've got big task on our plate, and that is the update of the Internet Coordination Policy, ICP2. I think it was mentioned already on this call, and that's a policy that actually defines how a new area regional internet registry can be created. Under this policy, LACNIC and AFRINIC were created back in 2002 and 2005. And the policy itself, it was introduced in 2001, so it's almost 25 years old. And as you imagine, over this time, the system has evolved dramatically. But also the policy covers only one element. It only talks about how the area can be introduced, can be recognized. It doesn't so much talk about the ongoing commitments of an area. And as any organization that can be created and then winded down, it doesn't talk about the recognition. So those are important elements that are introduced in the new document, and it will not be called ICP 5 or something because the series is discontinued. It will be called the Area Governance Document. So this is the work that the Address Council is focusing on. And of course, we're using area meetings and ICANN meetings to engage with the community. That is super important. That's one of our major focuses, apart from working on the content, to get feedback from the community. There are already 2 consultations on the document, both from the area communities and the ICANN community. And we think that's very important because ultimately legitimacy of this document comes from the community support. At ICANN84, we didn't have any real working sessions, but we were represented. There were a few people from ISO, and Nico and Esteban, who were present in Dublin. And we had a couple of very important meetings with GAC, ISPCP, and we had also a joint meeting with the ICANN Board of Directors. I think the document moves now into final phases of its development and drafting. Engagement with ICANN community, ICANN organizations becomes more and more important. And also because for ICANN, I think the numbering issues were less sexy compared to naming issues. We take time and we need to explain sometimes how the RI system works, because RI system works quite differently compared, for instance, from generic names. Apart from that, there was also a large plenary session called Areas at Crossroads, Governance Gaps, Regional Challenges, and ICANN's Role. We participated in this panel, and of course, there was also an opportunity for 3 members of the new elected AFRINIC Executive Board to be present and interact with the ICANN community. And we are very happy that AFRINIC is finally standing on their legs and moving into sort of stable operations, stable governance. So very happy about that. And by the way, last but not least, a member from African community was appointed to the Address Council. So I have to say that much of the work on this document have been done without AFRINIC members on the Address Council, but now we have at least 1 address member on the Address Council from African region. So that is very important. We are very happy. And I think that's it from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrei. Maybe, the work is to be continued always. Now we'll go to a testimonial from Mayssam Sabra, ICANN fellows, but also a member of the registry stakeholder group. Are you with us, Mayssam? You can put your camera on.
And hi, everyone, and thank you very much for this opportunity to speak tonight at the EURALO Readout. My name is Mayssam Sabra, and I am based in Switzerland, where I work for the Universal Postal Union. It's a United Nations agency. It operates also a top-level domain. Even though my organization is a contracted party with ICANN, but I didn't know what ICANN was until I joined the fellowship program, and I completed my third fellowship at the recent ICANN84 in Dublin. So that's why I am very happy today to share with you a bit of what I gained from this rewarding experience. Just before to jump to the key takeaways, I wanted to say that the real task of a fellowship is not really about surviving an ICANN meeting, but it's really about what we do next, what I do next, and how I take that access, that knowledge, and brings it back to serve the community that needs it most. And here I'm talking sure about our regional structures and how we can serve the region that we belong to. And now let me quickly jump to the key takeaways that I gained from this fellowship. And the first one is really about the importance of clarity and the simplicity, because as we all know, ICANN is huge, is really vast and big, and we can easily get lost in acronyms, in complex calendar meetings, in meetings room, in a big amount of documents. And when we go to a meeting, we listen and we hear experts that are talking at a very high level view. And we, and myself as a fellow, I was starting from the ground and I got overwhelmed at my first ICANN fellowship. Then I learned quickly that my role is not to absorb the complexity, but to demand for simplicity and to ask simple and clear questions so we can refocus a debate or a discussion or a topic toward the public interest. So here I want to really highlight the importance of not absorbing the complexity, but demanding for simplicity. And the second takeaway is about that. ICANN is not for only technical people, because when we say ICANN or we talk about ICANN, most of people think that it's only for technical experts, for DNS experts, for engineers, but it's not that. Of course, it needs a lot of technical experts, but also it needs people from different skills that can help and contribute. So there are people that can contribute, for example, in areas about, let's say, administration, communications, marketing, outreach, capacity building. So these skills are really needed in ICANN, and everyone can contribute based on his or her knowledge background. Here, I wanted to highlight the importance to help people realize that this space is not just for engineers or technical experts, but for everyone who uses the internet. And the third key takeaway I gained is the human networks. Networking is critical, is really an important key, because when we read, for example, a policy document, but we don't know who is drafting it, who is presenting it, who is voting on it, that means we know half of the story, right? I think the networking and building connections, talking to people, having connections with people from all stakeholders group is very important, because I believe that our ability to influence the system comes directly from the strengths of our relationships. So networking is very important key takeaway. I don't want to speak more or take more time because we have limited time, but I would also say that the fellowship program is fantastic. It's really excellent, because for me, it could be a very good starting point, but it's a still educational program as it is an exercise where we more see and observe. But in fact, the internet needs contributors, not just observers. When I finished the fellowship program, I had with me two things: the knowledge of the structure and the clear need for capacity building in our region. So that's why I joined EURALO, which was an obvious next step for me. And I'm very keen to contribute in the capacity building and outreach activities of EURALO. And just to conclude my intervention, I want to say that the fellowship gave me the map, and now EURALO provides me the vehicle, and my focus is now on the destination. And I hope that my road to the destination will have action, impact, and clarity. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm looking forward to contributing alongside all of you. Thank you.
Frederic Taes speaking. Thank you very much, Mayssam, for this inspiring and wonderful testimonial. I would like to have you for a recruitment campaign. You are part of the new generation, so something to be organized next. And now to conclude this first part of the session, we have the immense honor to welcome Maarten Botterman, who was former ICANN chair, the first one and the only one coming from the European community. So welcome, Maarten.
Oh, thank you, Frederic. Thank you. And indeed, my son, thumbs up. This is one of the points that you make so clearly and understand so clearly, and also is expressed in the strategic plan. We need new people. And it's amazing what the fellowship program and the newcomers program do for that. So thank you for engaging. And I see you as a big ambassador already today. So we'll see more of you. Yeah, to keep it short, it's been a pleasure to serve for 9 years. I enjoyed as a part of it. Focusing on what specifically happened here in Dublin was, of course, a great celebration of the fact that with regards to the applicant guidebook, we're on track. We're able to announce the launch of the next round to be by April 2026, unless big things go wrong. At the same time, we had to accept that things like the Latin diacritics are a challenge to get on board in time and how that exactly works. But I have all confidence that together we'll make that happen. There's a clear commitment to make it happen, that both in the organization and the board and as well as in the community. Even those parts that are not GNSO explicitly state that they're on board is trying to keep it on track and do what we can to have a great next round. Very well mentioned was, of course, also the review of reviews. I think that's a big nut to crack, importantly to crack. We need to continue to improve the way the multi-stakeholder system works. We understand that we need to improve it, but how to do it is apparently the challenge. And with the pilot holistic review that was given back by the chairs to the community and the board to find a new way forward, it shows how difficult it is. Many parts of 883 have been well accepted and implemented, like the prioritization, also the continuous improvement within the different communities themselves. But the holistic review was truly a challenge. What is clear to me is for sure that, yes, it was never the intent that ICANN would become an organization that bears out all its resources, volunteers, as well as capital to do reviews. Review is not the purpose. Review is a means to get the purpose, and it's to get our job done. So I'm really interested and following with interest how the next steps will develop. What is clear is that the review of reviews proposal as such is carried broadly by the community. We've heard about the concerns of ALEC, but even ALEC is on board, hoping that indeed this way forward is a way forward that can happen. Maybe not as quickly as we all want, but if we travel together, that's the best way to get as far as possible. So I wish you patience and all the best with that. Not looking back and blaming whatever went wrong, who did it, but really focusing on, so how can we get this to serve ICANN in fulfilling its mission? 2 points that weren't really mentioned, but I was personally involved with and I handed over. First, just the grant program. We had the first round. The first round was launched perfectly in line also with the policy that was generated by the community and handled very professionally by a team that hadn't done it before, although the individuals had been engaged with other programs. Joanna Kulesza, for instance, has been closely involved with also European Commission tenders. And Shana came directly from ISOC, where she's been handing out funds also in similar ways. Together, they and the team around them, I think, deserve the highest regards for the way they've handled this. And it was a first round to learn from, so I look forward to see what future rounds will bring. This program will now be taken over and furthered by also Alan Barrett, who's been taking over from me as soon as it turned out that there was an applicant that also is an applicant to which I sometimes provide services. And for that reason, I stepped back and stepped away from it after the program had been launched. So this is also a way the board commits to being transparent and dealing properly with conflict of interest. The other one is the Universal Acceptance Roadmap session that happened, which kept me out, Andrei, of the board ASO session, which I would have loved to be as well. But having been involved in the transition this year from an approach where the emphasis was on awareness, the celebration of 10 years of the Universal Acceptance Steering Group, and forming now an expert group advising the CEO in how to better implement it, how to make it further actually happen, consisting of experts from the community, but also from UNESCO, from the big platforms, from outside expertise that really helps to progress this. As universal acceptance isn't only about the domain names and how we recognize them, but also about all the software that needs to do with it to make it happen, including also for email. Very good to see that progress. Also their organization team deserves recognition, and this team have been very solid on this for many years. And I have all confidence that this will be an acceleration towards further embracing of the international languages on the internet. In that, particularly, I'm very happy to see UNESCO at our side working with us, and also to see that the technical person from Meta that was with us to talk about this, that nowadays for the big platforms that offer services also in different language scripts, that they consider it a technical challenge and an issue. So they make a ticket if there's something not working. So far for the highlights, Nick obviously has been the situation of Afrinic has triggered a lot in developments. Never waste a good crisis. ICP2, as Andrei talked about, is an excellent example of how RARs also try to make a kind of reference of what would be expected from RAR, whatever the specific purpose of that document is. And if I think back of text 37, 38, a couple of years ago, 4, 5, 6, that was also formulating, so how does a root server need to look like to work in the system whilst recognizing the independence of those. So that's a good thing. The other good thing is that I remember a time where also the RAR leaders may have come to ICANN once a year and interaction was relatively scarce. I see now an ecosystem in which the roles are very clear and appreciated and very well working together. I think with the situation in Afrinic, we've grown towards a more tight and more conscious community together with the numbers community, and that's something to cherish. And that was great to see the first Afrinic board members at the table as well. Now, Going forward, that was the second question. What do you expect? What do you look forward for? The reviews, getting the reviews right is really important to make sure that they're not too burdensome, but that they are effective, that they help ICANN to fulfill its mission in a relatively quick way, even if the stakes are that high and increasingly high. We need to deal with our stakes, and there's where we come together in our multi-stakeholder system. It's this one stake that we all agree with. We need to be successful together. And I have all confidence that we'll get there if we continue to talk. The most difficult aspect is if we talk about maybe calibrating the power balance, because people with power don't want to lose it, organizations with power don't want to lose it, and others would like it because they think they deserve a place at the table. How to deal with this? If I had a solution, I would share it with you now, but I just call for your conscious participation in a process like that, to understand that the world is changing, the way we deal with things are changing, and it's crucial that we also give in a little bit with the trust that together we are there to fulfill that common purpose. So that's my call. And last but not least, I'm very proud to say that we're well on our way with the sustainability project, which is also grasped in the strategic plan. The carbon footprint of ICANN is currently being researched, and the report is about ready and hopefully will be published before the end of this year or shortly after. And that would be the basis for an informed discussion of how we can do better towards the future. Two elements. One is what we can just do more effectively in how we facilitate meetings with drinking cups and whatever, or green things, how we run the offices, how we run the data centers. But the other thing is really something where you all need to be present in. That is understanding the carbon footprint of our meetings together in terms of travel, go to places, understanding that these meetings are crucial to get things done, crucial to also reach to new regions, to get them to feel included, to raise awareness there. At the same time, how can we do that what is the balance with the carbon footprint of travel as well? So also there, I'm observing, participating, very useful. I think this is one of the big things going forward as well.
Thank you very much, Maarten. We are out of time, but thank you very much for everything that you made. I propose to skip poll. We will make a poll at the end of the meeting with all questions together, meeting evaluation, and also what are the interesting topics for you. We can go directly to the second part, and thank you again, Maarten. Natalia, Filina, the floor is yours about the next round of gTLD and the end user's perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frederic, and thanks a lot for everyone who joined us. It's not so early time for many of us, but you look so fresh and happy. I don't want to waste your time now, and we come to the new round of gTLD topic. We know that we hear different opinions from the industry, skepticism or joy, but we would love to discuss it from end user's perspective. And I'm inviting to the microphone Olivier Crépin-Leblond to start the discussion. All of your opinions or comments are welcome in chat and after this call. Olivier, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Natalia. Olivier Crépin-Leblond speaking. And I was going to speak I think I was given 9 minutes, but I probably will be crunching this to a little less so that we can have more of a discussion on this. So new gTLDs, new generic top-level domains, I guess we all know what they are about, and I have to slow down my speech as well. We know what they're about, and for end users, the first question, I guess, is what are the opportunities for end users? And the first thing is, of course, the greater choice and the diversity, and this is something which we have really tried to push for this next round, to include more meaningful domain names for local communities in local languages, and in scripts as well. And thus the work that was done on the internationalized domain name is very welcome. It's a way to support cultural identity and inclusivity. It's also a way to innovate so that you have creative namespaces, I don't know, the likes of .music or .echo or .health that make websites easier to identify
by purpose or by community. And that's something which has been always sold to the communities out there. And one of the, I think, important points is the competition that has been introduced in the last round. The fact that domain names today are less expensive than they were before. And why? Because there was such a restriction on the top level domains that you could register a domain name in for your business or even for yourself in the past. And this was really now eased and reduced the barriers for many small businesses, especially in developing countries where, you know, what used to be $100 for a domain name per year is now a lot less, and $100 is worth a lot in some countries. There's also certainly the chance to have more representation of underserved groups. Now, the last round didn't really do that, and we're hoping as a community that this round will definitely help with community applications. And that, of course, should be helped with the applicant support program, not just as support for the application process and the cost of the application process, but we have seen in a recent at-large session at the last ICANN meeting that the industry itself, registrars, registries, other organizations that are involved in the domain namespace are ready to help and are ready to provide their support for some applicants that might have not otherwise been able to apply. And then there's, of course, for the at-large community, we've raised a lot of concerns since the last round based on a number of things. First, the consumer protection side, the cyber squatting, the potential for fraud, for confusion, for DNS abuse, as we've seen, is something that we were very concerned about for quite some time. And things are indeed now being dealt with and improving. I'm not saying we're seeing less fraud and cyber squatting. It's part of life. But we're definitely seeing that the efforts to combat that have been stepped up. And there are more and more safeguards being added to the processes so as to try and avoid this next round being used for malevolent purposes. There is, of course, the ever ongoing concern about universal acceptance. We're not quite sure if all of the last round top-level domains are accepted worldwide, especially those that are not in the Latin character script. And so many browsers and email clients and apps still fail to recognize them. And it certainly undermines the usability for end users. As far as the affordability is concerned, it's cheaper now, so that's a good thing. And there is also, I think, as far as the at-large committee is concerned, an interest in having trust in the domain names. We had some concerns in the last round. The EURALO had the ability to produce some objections, file community objections against some applications. And one of them that it did was about .health. And it was interesting because out of the .health applicants, it went against, it found objections against 3 of them, and it did not file against the 4th one. Now, it's one of the ones that the at-large community filed objections about that actually won the overall running of the, and was delegated .health. But interestingly so, in the commitments that this organization has made, we are seeing an answer to the concerns that the at-large community had raised. Our community wants domain names that they can trust. So sensitive domain names like .health that I've mentioned, or .bank or .pharmacy have all introduced a whole number of recommendations and of rules in regards to registering domains under these top-level domains that make sure that they have very low levels of DNS abuse, among the best ones in the industry. There is also a concern which we had, I think, in the last round regarding overload and confusion, having too many top-level domains, because before you could recognize a domain name because it ended with .com or .net and .org. I'm not sure, actually. That's a question I can ask you. Do you think it's introduced confusion in people's browsers, or do we just not care about it? The guiding principles of the at-large community has been really to have end-user centricity, making sure that any policy really is there for the safety and for the usability and for the affordability for individuals. We also, I think, have been pushing for registries and registrars to operate in an accountable and in a transparent way. And I think that there's been a lot done as well about that in the community. And then one of the things that we've really pushed for, and which has really definitely improved the quality of the domains, top-level domains out there, is the public interest safeguards, or otherwise known as public interest commitments, the PICs, which are part of the contracts and which have really helped with some sensitive top-level domains having very much lower levels of DNS abuse because of the strict eligibility and verification requirements. And then one of our concerns, of course, has been participation, being able to have communities that have so far been underserved to be able to take part in the current round. Now, I'm not sure whether that will be achieved in the current round. There's an enormous amount of work has taken place in the generic name supporting organization. Sebastien Ducos just spoke to us about policy development processes that took 10 years. Some of them took less time, but the size of the task was absolutely huge, as every single bit of the last round was completely taken apart into small little things and analyzed and found out, can we do better? Can we improve on the process? Can we avoid the mistakes we had before? And I think that overall, I was very concerned in the last round, and I'm less in this round as myself, because so much has been looked at by the whole community, by the generic name supporting organization, but with the input of all of the different component parts of ICANN, including the Security and Stability Advisory Committee, including the GAC, including pretty much everyone. In a nutshell, we're looking at a balancing act as to whether it will be for the best or for the worst. But so far, I'm feeling quite positive about the next round. And I think that the advocacy that the at-large community has brought into the system has certainly made a difference. And if we can have another round that is going to be serving the public interest and not just going to be a commercial gain of make.money.fast, just to have a pun, then we'll have a successful next round. But only time will tell. And I wonder what your thought is about it. Thanks.
Dear Olivier, thank you very much. It's great speech, the summary, and for sure we within at-large community should develop the discussion and establish it, and we will try to bring this topic for the next ICANN meeting, maybe. We'll try. Thank you very much. I think we might have many comments or reaction after this call. Thank you again. The floor is yours, Frederic.
Thank you very much, Natalia, Olivier. Yeah, I think that this topic might deserve a meeting in itself only for this topic and not at the end of something. We have a survey at the end of this meeting. So if you are really interested, I think that Olivier made a great speech. So we will organize another session on this topic. I would like really to thank the 9 great speakers and Olivier and Natalia for the preparation, also all the staff, interpreters. I think it's really good. And we would like to have your input about this new format with more time to speak for each speaker and what could be the topics interest you the most, and we will discuss in upcoming EURALO monthly meetings. With this, I think that I have concluded a little bit. Natalia, do you want to add something?
Only big thanks to everyone. And so let's continue our discussion with our capacity building new stream, refreshing stream. And within EURALO, we will be very happy to have all of you with certain exact topic, very interesting and important for end user. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. Michelle will send, I think, by email the link to the survey. I would like to thank everyone and wishing you a good rest of the day and keep in touch. See you soon. Thank you very much. Good evening.